Hello, everyone. I'm Alisa Gumbs, the Executive Managing Editor of Black Enterprise, and welcome to Follow the Data, Forecast the Trends. Data is a part of everything we do today. Netflix wouldn't be able to recommend your next favorite show without the data it collects. And Black Enterprise wouldn't be able to predict which stories you'll care about without the trends we analyze. The global data market reached $208 billion last year, with 2.7 million jobs in the US alone for data professionals. And the industry is projected to grow 10% each year. So the opportunities are there. We're excited today to have two women who have built successful careers out of data and trends and who clearly love what they do. Please welcome Dr. Tiffany Perkins-Munn, a managing director and the head of research, analytics, and data at BlackRock, and Etsy's trend expert, Dayna Isom Johnson. Thank you so much for being here with us today, ladies.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us. Yes.
You both have very impressive, very cool sounding titles, and I want us to shed some light on what they actually mean. Tiffany, when we first connected, I told you that I nearly fell out of my chair when I saw your LinkedIn profile. And that was absolutely true. Seriously, ladies, check her out. But tell us, what does it mean to be the head of data analytics and research at BlackRock?
So what it means actually is that we're using insights from our clients. We're going out, we're collecting client feedback. We're using that insight to better understand who our clients are, how can we meet them where they are, how can we be more proactive versus reactive. That could involve like taking that insight or that information, putting it into a model where we're looking at everything that we know about the client. So what they tell us, what we already know about them because they're already doing business with us, data that we may be collecting about people who are like our clients or other clients that are similar, and really building advanced models and using analytics to help us tell a unified story about our client, with the goal of both providing them with a comprehensive products and services solution, but also really being able to get in front of their needs, anticipate their needs, and be very predictive about what we offer for them so that they walk away with experiencing the entirety of BlackRock versus a siloed experience.
And Dayna, when we first connected, I told you that I thought you have one of the coolest jobs on the planet. And I meant that. What does it mean to be the trend expert at Etsy, and how does data fit into what you do?
Yeah, so my job at Etsy is really about combing through our millions of items on Etsy and finding out what's the coolest, what's the untapped, what's the freshest items, and really tying it in a beautiful package to present it to customers and also to present it to media to really show what's forthcoming and what is on the rise. But I think what's really interesting about everything that I put out there, especially within my trend reports, is that it's backed up by real data. This is what customers are engaging with, what they're clicking on. So it really shows the in real time interest of what shoppers are wanting to discover.
You both have had very different paths to get where you are now. Tiffany, you spent your entire career using data to help financial services companies make better decisions and solve business problems. Tell us what drew you to the field in the first place and what your career path has been.
Absolutely. First, I'd like to say I'm an avid Etsy shopper.
Ooh, and yes.
You got my data. But, I think it's true. It's not unlike what we've been talking about on the panel here. Like, I got started in data because, I started out because I was getting this Ph.D. in psychology and an interdisciplinary concentration in advanced quantitative methods. All that means is applied stats. It's like, how do you apply statistics to real world problems, to answering questions, to figuring out data? In Etsy's case, like, who's using it? Who's clicking it? What are they buying? What are the trends? Like, it's all very related. So I would say we have very similar jobs. But I got started and I realized that this was a role or an expertise, I should say, that was very extrapolatable, right? So data, analytics, research, you can use it in healthcare, in education, in retail like Etsy. You could take it to Amazon. You could go to Google. You could go to a startup, right? So it's a skill set that I always recommend that people get, even if it's not something they want to focus on, because it is a skill set that you can take to a number of different places. So even though I started and I was more focused on statistics, I wouldn't say that that is necessarily the goal. Like, there are people who don't necessarily do statistics but are very savvy in data, and they know how to wrangle and organize and think critically through data. And that's the key. Like, do you have the skill set to be a critical data thinker? Because I think you can learn the tools, like all these tools that we mentioned, Python, R, SQL, blah, blah, blah. You can learn those, but the critical thinking is a skill that you have to hone over time to really be able to pull out the insights from the information and think about how you need to organize the information in order to get the key insights or to uncover what's there. So that's really what's critical when you're thinking about a career in data and research and analytics.
And why is it that you chose to start with financial services and stay with financial services? And can you tell us some of what your progression has been in terms of titles or responsibilities so that people get an idea of the career ladder?
Yeah, actually, I didn't start with financial services. I started with market research. And I ran an analytics team for a firm called Ipsos, which at the time was like a really large survey-based firm headquartered in France. And I had lots of exposure in that role across different industries, right? I did retail like Motorola, Toys R Us, U.S. Golf Association, Lexus, Mercedes-Benz. So Morgan Stanley, right? So I got a lot of exposure across a number of different industries. And then while I was working there, one of our clients was Morgan Stanley, as I mentioned. We built an institutional client feedback program for Morgan Stanley, basically to go out and talk to buy-side portfolio managers, analysts, and traders to find out how they like doing business with Morgan Stanley and what could we do to help them, be more successful partners. And the person who was running that division decided that she wanted to go run some other division in Morgan Stanley, and she invited me, internal. She said, would you like to come on the client side to basically run this effort from the client side and, take on other sort of data and analytic responsibilities internally to Morgan Stanley? So that's how I entered financial services. And I have moved through the financial services landscape because, as I mentioned, this skill set is very extrapolatable from like sell side to buy side, which is like hedge funds if you think about it, corporate banking, business banking. I'm now in asset management. I've worked with financial advisors, so I've been able to translate this skill set even within the financial services industry to access a plethora of different types of opportunities and roles. All of the roles sound something like research, insights, consumer insights, data analytics, and analysis, data science, so when I'm like if I were putting words in a Google search for myself, those are the words that I would, if I'm like, I'm going to look for a new job, those are the words that I would sort of search for. I think across industries, they're very similar. Like, you're trying to do consumer insights, you're doing data and analysis, you're doing consumer research, you're doing data science. Sometimes I'll put in machine learning, depending upon what, which the company is and what they say they're looking for. But those are the types of sort of the lingo, the words, the nomenclature that I would use in order to find roles that were similar or that would help me grow in this path.
Dayna, you took a much different route to get where you are, coming to the e-commerce giant Etsy from a background in fashion. Tell us about your professional journey and what attracted you to trend forecasting.
Yeah, so I was at a women's wear brand and I was working in PR. And at that point, this makes me feel a little old, just a little bit. But at that point, it was like, the internet is buzzing, this thing about e-commerce and shopping on the internet. So that's when I discovered Etsy, and I said, wow, this place is so creative, it's so new. I would really love to get my feet wet at this new startup. And I started at Etsy actually on the PR team. And I was, training people to go on interviews, to go on television and do all the things that PR people do. And at the time, I was training a person to go on Good Morning America for our very first television appearance. And that person was not able to go on. And this was 24 hours before our segment. And it was about wedding trends. And it was something that I had written up anyway, because most of the time, PR people are the ghostwriters, are the person behind the talent. And anyone who's ever worked in PR knows that you do not give up a morning segment because it is something that is earned. It's not paid for. So the agency that I was working with at the time said, Dayna, don't worry. We're fine. We have someone. I'm like, no, we don't. And they said, it's you. We think you can do it. And so I went on Good Morning America the very next day, delivered the wedding trends. And it was something that awakened my spirit like I've never felt before in my life. And I said, oh my gosh, this is my purpose, to tell stories in a wide range in a wide range of platforms. And so I went to the executive team at the time at Etsy and said, hey, listen, I think that this is something that can be great for Etsy. I want to be the person who talks about what people are shopping for, what they're excited about. Let's dig into the data and allow me to do that. And let's just see how it goes. And I think because I started at a startup, it was much easier for me to approach them with this new job concept. But I'm so thankful, I'm so grateful that they believed in me. And that was 5 years ago. And so now I've grown our trend focus at Etsy to heights that we've never thought that we could have taken it. And it's just been an incredible ride. And now I've been at Etsy. It'll be 10 years actually in November.
I love that it ignited your spirit and you took the bold move of asking for what you wanted and creating your own role. And I know I, for one, look forward every year to Etsy's trend report coming out. I'm like, how would I know what's going on, what I need to buy for my house, what new pillow is going right back there without the Etsy reports? So this question is for both of you, for women out there who may be thinking of transitioning into this field. What types of people do you think that it is well suited for? And what are the skills that have served you well in your roles? Tiffany, we'll start with you.
Yeah. So one thing I want to focus on that Dayna actually brought up, which I think is incredibly important, is this concept of storytelling. So I think that people hear, oh my God, she has a degree in statistics, and you don't make the connection between like statistics and storytelling, right? But it's so critically important because you can do the most complicated advanced analysis, and if you can't tell people why it's important or what it means or what they should be getting from it, or what the predictions or the implications are of it, then it's almost pointless that you have that skill set, right? So this concept of really being able to tell a concise, succinct, but very clear story to people who potentially don't speak data or don't speak statistics is a critically important skill. And when I'm looking for people to join my team, I'm always interested in seeing, are they good storytellers? Can they take a complex, unique analysis and tell me about it in a way that I think anyone would be able to understand or anyone would be able to glean the insights from? So that piece of it is critically important. I mean, I think it gets underplayed because, oh, do you know Python and and all that's great. But it's like, if you know it, but then you can't tell me about it, then it's pointless. So I really want to make sure that people understand the importance of just being able to translate the work that they do into stories that everyone can understand.
And you mentioned earlier, Tiffany, a couple of traits like critical thinking. Can you expound some more on, how important that is in this role?
Yeah, exactly. It's really not about, I think it's great when you know different languages but those languages are things that you can be taught. What you are learning as you go through your career development is really how do you think critically? And by that, I mean, if you're critiquing something, then you should be able to redesign it. Like, it's not enough to say, well, that doesn't work. You need to be able to say it doesn't work like that, and here's another way that you can think about it. So be really critical and strategic at the same time. It's a skill set. I do think it's important also that you don't have to know statistics at an advanced level, but you should be able to move around through Excel, for example. Like people who can manipulate, do pivot tables, move around in Excel, understand sort of Visual Basic and, how to use the information in Excel to pull stories. Those are people who would probably be interested in learning more advanced languages and who would be interested in learning some of the other statistical techniques. But there's also this idea of how well you relate to other people, right? So it sounds like it's a back office, numbers crunching kind of job. But as I mentioned, as Dayna mentioned, it's about storytelling and really being able to relate to people, knowing your audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you might not tell the story to me the same way that you would tell it to Dayna or the same way you would tell it to Alicia, right? You got to know your audience, and you have to have that skill. That's a skill in really knowing who the audience is and what the critical pieces of information are that will be important for that particular audience. Those are all, I know those seem like softer skills to many people, but they are so incredibly important when you're trying to talk through data and information and statistics and things like that. I can't iterate them enough and emphasize the importance of them.
Dayna, what are some of the skills that have served you well?
I think one is probably to, Tiffany mentioned this as well, digest the data that you're receiving, but then also be able to predict. Because a big part of my job is, okay, this is what's happening right now, but then what are shoppers going to want to know from me that's going to happen 6 months from now, next spring, and so on and so on. So I think like a great example of that is 2 years ago, I saw this trend called wabi-sabi. Have you guys ever heard of wabi-sabi?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So love, and
we told you we're Etsy followers. We know.
Yeah, I love it. So maybe for the audience who's never heard of wabi sabi before, it is about loving imperfection. So if you have like a table and there's a piece of gnarled wood, rather than trashing it and saying that's junk, you actually embrace the love of that and turn it into something beautiful, right? So that was a 2018 thing. Then in 2019, my team and I had to really uncover the data and say, okay, people are loving nature. They're loving these imperfections. So what does that mean? What's coming next? What's the next thing? So that in turn pushed us to look at this Norwegian concept that's called friluftsliv, that's about embracing nature and loving the outdoors. But it's all based on how things have a continuation, how they pivot and move on to the next. And all of that is grouped together by analyzing the data and really understanding what you're looking at and predicting what's to come for the future.
And Dayna, I hear so much in what you're saying about the power of asking questions and more questions and going deeper. I would think that intellectual curiosity is one of the skills that would be, really important in this role.
Absolutely. I think one of the reasons why I love my job so much is because I'm passionate about it. A lot of people maybe don't care about a piece of gnarled wood and why it's popular. But for me, I love what I do. I love the categories that I work in. I love the products that I see. So I think for those people who are interested in some type of path of data analytics or research, like know your customer. And Tiffany said this as well, know the product, be passionate about what you do. And it's very cliche, but truly, if you love what you do, you're not working. So if you're looking at numbers that you could care less about, of course it's going to feel taxing. And of course it's going to feel like, numbers. But when I'm looking at high-low wedding gowns and the fact that they're trending up, I'm like, give me more, tell me more.
I think Dayna and I might need to do a job swap. I
think that's a great idea. You guys should swap for a day.
Right.
That is awesome.
It sounds like a TV show. We'll do like an undercover boss, but an undercover
Right.
position swap. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So this is sort of the flip side to that question, which are about obstacles or challenges. So are there any common challenges that women should be aware of, or even that you wish you'd known about back when you started? And Dayna, why don't you start us off this time?
To be honest, because my journey was a little different getting to where I am today, I think one thing that I wish I would have known, I went to FIT here in New York City, and I only thought that in the fashion industry, I could be a buyer or I could be a designer. And I learned very quickly that I'm not super talented with a pencil, and I don't live and breathe Excel sheets. And that is much of what a buyer does. I was not privy to all of the career paths that I could take. I didn't know that I could be a trend expert. I had no idea. So I wish that I would have taken advantage of doing more internships, shadowing more people, asking more questions, to really know what my career path could be. Well, now it is, but I could have known earlier. So I really always push people to ask questions. Like, don't hesitate. If you find someone like myself or Tiffany, like if you want to have a 10-minute Zoom together, like let's do that so you can learn more. And in terms of obstacles, again, I think for me it's a little difficult, but what I will say is if I didn't take this risk, I wouldn't have my job today. So you can't let the risk be your obstacle. Make sure you take the leap.
Mm-hmm.
You've had more of a traditional trajectory within the data industry. What are some of the pitfalls that you would say people should look out for?
Yeah, I think that you have to, so I'll just be completely honest. When I didn't grow up in the industry, as I mentioned, I came from market research. And for a long time, I had imposter syndrome, right? I was an African-American woman in a space that has very few African-Americans and very few women. I didn't grow up in the industry. I wasn't, I wasn't sure about who I was in the space and what I had to offer. And I wish I had known then what I know now, which is like I came in with a Ph.D., right? But even that, I was still like unsure about my place in this particular industry. And I think, leaning into your confidence when you don't really feel it, right, is a very important part of growing into the role and growing into an experience. Like, you don't feel confident, you might not know, you feel like an imposter, you might feel like you're in the wrong space, but how do you put forth a sense of confidence, of believing in yourself, of being self-aware, of just observing and listening too, and just making sure. Like, I would hear things and I would think, oh, I should jump in and I could correct that or fix that or change that. But I was more docile back in the day, right? A little bit like, well, I don't want to step on anyone's toes. But I think you actually have to do that. You have to put yourself out there. You have to make sure that you are comfortable with the confidence that you have inside, and you have to put that out on the world. And it's not an easy thing to do. So it's much easier said than done. But I would say if you're in the situation and you think, should I, then you actually should. You should say it. You should do it. You should experiment. You should try, right? Because otherwise you spend a lot of time second guessing and doubting yourself when you really shouldn't, because eventually you will be the expert in the space like I am. And then you'll be like, oh my God, I knew all this stuff. I could have done more sooner, faster. So if you learn from me, just learn to be comfortable with your strengths and what you know in the space, and to put more of that out there earlier on.
Tiffany, I'm so glad you mentioned being a Black woman working in a space that doesn't have a lot of Black women, because the entire point of this conference is about highlighting and sharing the unique realities that Black women face in tech. Oftentimes, those of us in tech roles or tech companies don't have a lot of visibility. So I would like to ask each of you what you would like people to know about your experience of being a Black woman executive in technology. Dayna?
Um, it is certainly a challenge. That's for sure. But I will say this. I am very proud that I work for a company who values me and who felt good to put me at the forefront. And perhaps it's because we're a newer company, or a newer, not super new now, but at that point we were. And I think now sometimes companies are putting us Black women at the forefront because it looks good or because they're supposed to, and not necessarily because they believe in that person or that they necessarily have the skill set that's right for that particular position. But I'm fortunate enough that my company believed in me, Dayna Isom Johnson, the proud Black woman who, did not back down from, no, I'm not going to straighten my hair. No, I'm not going to try to take away my Southern twang. No, I'm not going to, strip down any level of me. And so that is something that I'm very proud of, that I work for a company who cares and who is behind me 100%.
Tiffany, how about you?
I would say that I spend a lot of time trying to, in the space as a African American woman, trying to pay it forward. And by that, I mean, I have the role now, and I feel I have a responsibility in the role to look for others who look like, sound like, have my experience, and bring them along on a similar journey. So I do things like, if people come to me, if I'm hiring and they come to me with a slate that's not diverse, I won't even look at the slate. Like, don't bring me any, I don't want to, nope, I'm not going to look at that version first. I want a completely diverse slate. And if you bring me a slate that has the right level of diversity, then we can talk about how we will hire for these new roles. Or, when I'm referring people for different roles across the firm, I'm thinking, you do this now, but who's to say that that's a stretch opportunity that you couldn't do? Like, just because you're in this role, like, what I want to help people to understand is there's so much flexibility around all of these opportunities. And even as Dayna mentioned, people think you're in financial services, you must be running money, being a portfolio manager, but there's marketing jobs, there are operation jobs, there are technology jobs, law, legal jobs, et cetera. And really think beyond, Dayna and I actually happen to have a skill set that we can use anywhere. But even if you are working in a particular role, the skill set you are developing is also one that you should be thinking about. How can you use it in different parts of an organization or a different organization? So I'm constantly coaching and mentoring people to think beyond their current skill set. Think how you could take that skill set and stretch it into your next role. And that's a mentoring and a sponsorship challenge that I would ask all women of color and people of color to take on, because I've had that later in my career, but I wouldn't say that I had that earlier in my career. And I think it could make a difference for the lives of a lot of people.
And Tiffany, if I could just jump in here quickly, Alisa, I think another thing that I would really love for us as Black women to come together on more is, especially because I'm a forward-facing persona with my job, right? Like I do a lot of TV opportunities, I'm on television shows. And I think a lot of times, especially for us, it's like, there can only be one of us within that space. No, that's absolutely not the case. Like, why? Let's work together. Let's push each other up at the same time. You be on this show, I be on this show. Girl, let's win Emmys together. Let's do it together.
Right.
Rather than, Tiffany leads the financial roles, and Dayna's within the home and living space. So period. Right. No, that's not the case.
And people will box you in sometimes too, like, because Dayna does that and because Tiffany does this, the career trajectory is based on what you do now. But you have to be your own best advocate. You have to push for new opportunities, talk about how you can move from this space to that space. And it's really, really important. You can't wait for other people to advocate for you because they might, but not on your time schedule. So you really have to be proactive and progressive about advocating for yourself.
Yes.
We've spent a lot of time talking about people having jobs in the data industry, but even those of us who don't work in data can benefit from learning to understand and leverage it. So Tiffany, how would you suggest that professionals in any field start to use data to improve their organizations?
So I think the first clarification we should make is that everybody works in data. Everybody. It's virtually impossible. I mean, think of any role. All three of us work in data. We're collecting data right now while we're doing this conference, right? Like every single interaction that you have every single day is a data collection point. And especially now that everything is digital, things are being captured digitally, things are being recorded instantaneously. Every time we click on a button on anything, our computer, our phone. So I think it's really important to think to yourself, where are the opportunities? Maybe your role doesn't have data in the title, but in your role, even if you sit in a dentist's office as an assistant, where are the places where you are collecting data where you could use that information that's coming into your firm to inform how you could do things better, how the firm can perform differently, how you might elevate the quality of the work that's happening. I think every role has a data element. It's just a matter of thinking critically, again, critical thinking, around how you could use that data to make informed decisions that would improve the quality of the work that's happening, regardless of the industry, the role, the organization, et cetera.
And Dayna, I would like to ask you how the entrepreneurs in our audience can use data to run more successful small businesses. I know Etsy has a ton of tools available for its community of entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about behavior. It's all about your customers' behavior. What are they engaging in? What are they craving? What are they really wanting at this point right now? So I think one thing to think about, especially for any entrepreneur who perhaps wants to start an Etsy business, starting a business can be very difficult and taxing and expensive. But when you come to a third party platform like Etsy, you can start a business for 20 cents and an idea. That's it. So you upload, look at my Etsy shopper smiling because y'all love to see it. Y'all love the items. But you can really drive your own business and not have to be boggled down with all the analytics and the data that comes along being an entrepreneur on your own. That's why third-party places like Etsy exist, for you to focus on the creativity and for us to help you on the data side.
It has been so great talking with both of you ladies. I want to thank you both again for joining us today, for sharing so much of your wisdom and helping us shed light on this very in-demand area of technology. I hope everyone out there has been paying close attention. Thank you all for joining us.